Next up, we're going to hear about AT&T's IoT Starter Kit. Just the fact that AT&T has created an IoT development kit is kind of evidence of how important these boards and these kits are to this ecosystem. If you think about your smartphone and the applications that you use every day on your smartphone, some of those are applications that didn't even exist 5 or 10 years ago, and it's likely to be the same with the Internet of Things. So these development kits are giving makers and creators the opportunity to create the applications that are going to drive billions of dollars of investment in hardware and in networks in the years to come. So we are going to hear now from AT&T's Richard Finn. He not only runs the IoT Starter Kit business, but he also is in charge of the IoT data plan that AT&T introduced last year. So I think it's going to be a great presentation. It's Richard Finn.
Not working? All right, I guess use this one. All right, like she said, my name is Richard Finn. I'm the product manager with our IoT data plans, and I help with the developer experience for the Starter Kit and a little bit some of our dev tools. I'll talk about that in a second. But like she said, it's kind of interesting. You know, this is 2017, and the iPhone came out in 2007, right? So think about that. There wasn't an app store before that, and we didn't really tap the developer ecosystem to create actual enterprise applications. And so now that we have that, we're seeing that in the IoT space as well, right? Put the tools in the hands of the developers, and they build new and interesting things that we don't think of in the larger organizations. So in that regard, we have this cycle, right? Prototype, pilot, production. And we had an issue where our innovation centers, we call them foundries. Okay, we have one based on IoT, and it's in Plano, and I work out of there several days a week. And we have a lot of our big customers come up there, and we found that a lot of times they'll go out and they'll buy Arduinos and Raspberry Pis, and they'll hook it up to their devices, and they want to come in. When they talk to us, they don't want it to be a one-sided conversation. They want to know a little bit about IoT before they come in the door. And so we said, okay, let's arm them with not just something based on Wi-Fi, based on Arduinos or Raspberry Pis, but something based on AT&T connectivity. And so the original starter kit was developed, and I like to tell the story that's very interesting. AT&T, large organization, 268,000 people. A year ago, a little over a year ago, the starter kit was an idea. It was a PowerPoint presentation. In July of 2016, we launched hardware and software. So from an idea to reality in 3 months. And that's what AT&T did with that technology. Now this technology is in the hands of developers. They do things in a matter of weeks, right? So again, talk about the corporate makers. Those people I talk about that come in to the foundry and they needed something to develop with. Half of our starter kits are bought by organizations in the Fortune 500. So large enterprises, they buy these $100 kits and they build things with it before they come in, and they experiment, they build out prototypes, they look at what's possible. The other half are small, medium-sized businesses, a lot of startups that are looking, either they're an IoT startup or something related to IoT, and they buy these starter kits to kind of play with. Also, makers themselves, students that want to learn, and they're using these tools to do that. Okay, so the original starter kit, okay, is based on a Altair chipset. I should say that Christopher took off, but it comes with a Gemalto SIM. I really like the SIM because it's got a punch out. So you can have a standard size SIM, a micro SIM, or a nano SIM in one card. Now this particular guy here takes a micro SIM. The modem is LTE Cat 1, which is for AT&T bands 2, 4, and 12. Cat 1 gets up to 9 megabits. It's on what's called an access point network, APN, that puts you on the public internet. So you can talk to AT&T services, and it comes with an account for M2X and Flow, as well as Control Center for controlling SIMs. You can also, if you want to, talk to AWS. We actually have kits and examples on how to talk to AWS, how to talk to Azure, how to talk to IBM Bluemix, or whatever else you want to talk to. My friends over at Cyan, you can talk to their network, any other network you'd like to. The other thing I wanted to talk about, of course, the antennas. And this guy here is built around prototyping, right? It's not something you would put into a production product. I remember what I was going to say. So I took some slides out, and I realized I took the slide out that had the website address. So if you're curious about the website address, it's Starter Kit, one word, starterkit.att.com. And we sell these, you can just put down a credit card, and they come to you in about 10 days. So AT&T enabled SIM. The SIM has 300 megs of data, 300 SMS. It's good for 6 months. After 6 months, that SIM is used up. And I'll get to what happens next in a little bit. Now, some people said, you know what, that's great. It comes with this K64F. This blue board on here is a K64F. You program it with ARM embed. It's a C-based environment. It's a free account, open source. We have a library for you that's open source. You compile that, build your own application. That's great. But you know what? I really like using my Raspberry Pi. I build things in Python. I just want the shield. And so he said, okay, fine. Turns out that you can take the shield and just plug it in to Raspberry Pi over USB. Comes up as ETH1, just a regular network interface, and you can use that instead of Wi-Fi, and away you go. So anything that you had before that worked with the Pi will work with cellular now instead. Also available at starterkit.att.com. It comes with the same data plan, access to Control Center, M2X, and Flow. So another thing we get from customers, though, is, okay, that's great. If I want GPS, I have to get a module. You don't have GPS built in. I need to go outside the US. You don't have that for me. So he said, okay, so we worked with our partner Avnet, and we worked on this global starter kit. It's going to be a little different from the existing domestic kit. So we announced this at Mobile World Congress. This is, like I said, global. So it'll be LTE Cat 4 in Latin America, Europe, and Pacific Rim, and then 3G fallback in most of the rest of the world. It'll have host mode. So the Qualcomm chip that it's based on has 4 cores. The 4th core is running an open embedded Linux. It has room for the user application. So you use what's called a Yocto toolchain. It's an open source C-based toolchain. We give a VM to program it, or Avnet will distribute the VM and based on Ubuntu Linux, where you can compile your code and push it down to the device. It runs in that host mode. It has GPS built in, okay? And also, you can see it's a smaller form factor. So not only can you run it just in single board, just itself, and you can plug in sensors and other devices right to it, including the Groove ecosystem of sensors, a few other Arduino-based shields. It'll have an expansion board for it. You can make your own expansion boards for it, and you can actually build a full product out of this kit. So it's actually meant to be all the way that cycle I showed earlier, prototype, pilot, production. This device is built for that. Like I said, and the antenna is kind of nice. It has the LTE primary, diversity, and GPS all in one antenna. Now, this will be sold through Avnet as a service as well. So rather than sell connectivity, because we do want this to be a true global kit, well, AT&T, we have relationships with partners. We have regulatory constraints about what we can do in other countries. So rather than sell you connectivity in other countries, we sell M2X, or Avnet will sell M2X as a service. 40,000 data points for $25, and then you don't worry about connectivity, you don't worry about monthly charges. It's all rolled into the price of the data points. And this will be coming out this summer, June or July timeframe. This will not be sold on starterkit.att.com, but we have a link to it. We already linked to its website, its web address over on Avnet's website, cloudconnectkits.org, and you can sign up for information for when ordering is available. So another thing people ask about, so I talked about the 300 megs good for 6 months, and developers say, okay, what comes next? Like, I have a pilot, it's out there for a lot longer than 6 months, or I'm going to use a lot more than 300 megs of data. What comes next? So we said, okay, this is my baby, IoT data plan. So you want to have, you like cellular, you like this idea of like, I don't have to worry about a Wi-Fi network. If I don't know, I don't trust, I don't have a Wi-Fi network or some other type of network technology, I want to deploy cellular. So great, you can use this. It doesn't have to be in our starter kit. Any device that's certified for AT&T's network, 3G or 4G LTE, can use these data plans. You get, the SIM is $2 a piece, and then you pay $1 per month for the SIMs, up to 1,000 SIMs. We're going to lift that limit very soon. The current buckets, this is going to change too, coming soon, but this is what we have right now, is 1 gig, 3 gig, or 5 gig shared among all your SIMs. So if you have 100 SIMs, they could share a pool of, say, 3 gigs for up to a year. So you have a year to use that data. It renews either at the end of the year or when you use up all your data, whichever comes first. And it just keeps renewing as long as you need it to. Okay, these are commercial. The Gemalto SIM, again, control center and access to AT&T, M2X, and Flow as well. So now, M2X and Flow, AT&T has 2 main strategies or approaches to IoT. One is verticals, right? We have vertical applications around asset management, heavy equipment, remote monitoring, tank monitoring, things like that. And we also have our horizontal platforms. These are tools that we give to developers to use. Right now, these are free for up to 100,000 data points a month or 10 devices. So developers can just use it. They're based on open source products. So M2X, for instance, is based on Elasticsearch under the hood, and then Flow Designer is based on IBM Node-RED. We put some other enterprise features around them and put it into a Docker container. That Docker container is then deployed into Azure or into AWS, depending on the client's needs. And they can scale. So if as your application, let's say, goes from you're prototyping with a few devices, you go to 10,000 or 50,000 devices, you can expand the number of containers you use. What I like about these things, particularly Flow Designers, I use it for rapid development. I'll show you here an example. Again, you can imagine the websites for these are pretty easy, by the way, m2x.att.com and flow.att.com. They are device agnostic and network agnostic. So if you wanted to use my good friends over at Verizon for connectivity, that's okay. You can still use Flow and M2X as part of the application. In fact, what we see more of is people who have heterogeneous connectivity, right? Some of your IoT application is uses Wi-Fi. Some uses AT&T cellular connectivity. Some uses Verizon connectivity. Some maybe uses even LoRa or some other type of protocol. And that can all come into Flow, and you can normalize the data no matter how it comes in, and then send it out to other places wherever it needs to go. This is particularly useful. I guess these slides didn't get hidden. So talking about M2X here, we have lots of client libraries for it. These are all open source and freely available. And with Flow, again, this is you see a rapid design tool. It has these nodes on the left-hand side that you can just drag and drop onto the canvas that link together. Data flows from left to right through the flow. You can have multiple types of inputs and then multiple kinds of outputs, all the same protocols: MQTT, HTTP, FTP, even just straight up UDP and TCP. Right, you can make your own protocol. So I was going to show this example. This is one I created using the starter kit. So the code you see there on the let's say your left is the ARM embed code. Okay, this is on the developer.embed.org. So they have sample programs already written. We have libraries, like I said, it's called WNC interface because it's a WNC module. That's all available. I can write my code. In this case, I can download the source code that comes with the kit, modify it to fit my needs or to talk to my specific instance of Flow. It compiles a binary. I drag and drop the binary in my computer, so when I plug in the sample or the starter kit, it comes up as a USB share. I drag and drop the binary, it restarts the board, starts running my new binary, and it's going to send data to Flow. So wherever I deploy that starter kit now, it's going to send data into Flow. And in this case, I'm actually storing the data down in M2X. You see, and they are showing you a graph of temperature data over time. Now, part of the Flow, I'll just zoom in on the Flow here real quick. So you see I have different inputs. I have HTTP, I have UDP, and I have TCP. No matter how the data comes in, when it gets to that calculate heat index, that big node in the middle, it's all normalized, so it all looks the same. Calculates a heat index and then stores it in M2X, and that's where I was graphing it out of. And I should say too, when I talk about Flow real quick, some of you may have been to Mike Triano's talk earlier. So Mike Triano was the guy that in March of 2016 says, a starter kit, which was just going to be some APIs for control centers, says it needs to be hardware too. So when Mike Triano said hardware, we said, okay, great, and developed that. So I think he mentioned when we had a contest for the starter kit a few months ago, the guy who won it worked for a small town in Michigan called Holland, Michigan, and they have an issue around snow melt. It affects their infrastructure, the drainage, and they need to know when the snow is melting so they can make certain changes. Well, this guy heard about our contest. He got a starter kit. He learned M2X and Flow and a thing called PubNub, a publish subscribe service. In 2.5 weeks, he built his application on top of Flow and M2X and PubNub using the starter kit that actually monitored the water flow and the temperature at a remote location. He liked it so much and it worked so well that he bought several more starter kits and they actually deployed it around the city and they used it, or I should say, around the town. And my joke was always with him is like, it's not just smart cities anymore, it's a smart town, right? So he's now deploying his phase 2, and it's just fascinating to me because we talked about the beginning about empowering developers to make things we never even thought of. And this is someone that it's a small town, there's not a lot of companies building applications that fit his particular need, and he was able to develop something for himself with very little money. He only spent $100 on the kit and didn't have to spend anything on the accounts, and he ended up spending a few $100s overall to develop an application for his town that is used today, or not today now that spring's over, but is used as part of their infrastructure. I did have a slide, whoops, I got out of this kit, talking about the future. Just real quick on that, the Global Starter Kit is coming out in June. We're also partnered with Intel on the first version of Liquid, thank you, which is also coming out later this year, Q3. And then the Global Starter Kit I showed is global. It doesn't have LTE in the US. The North American version of the new kit will also come out in Q3. And then with LTE M. So I'm sure some of you have questions about LTE M. You heard Christopher from Gemalto talking about LTE M. The current domestic kit is firmware upgradable to LTE M. So we'll be rolling that out as a starter kit also later this year. So AT&T's rollout of LTE M is ongoing right now. It'll be nationwide very soon, and when it is, we'll be ready to go with the starter kit for LTE M as well. With that, Martha, I think we have time for questions. 2 questions. Any want to come up to the mic, or I'll give a mic to Martha. Yes. Yes. So the question is, I mentioned LTE M. Will it be upgradable to narrowband IoT? So that I cannot answer that yet. Narrowband IoT is certainly part of our conversation, but for LTE M in the US for us is by and large a software upgrade to our network. So it's easy to deploy. Narrowband IoT is new hardware. And in fact, the hardware will be different. The modems will be different. The LTE M or the LTE kit can become an LTE M kit in most cases. The global kit will not be LTE M, but the domestic one will. But it will not be. It will have be a different modem for narrowband. Anything else?
You mentioned that a significant portion of your sales are to makers and creators within Fortune 500 companies. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like? Are these companies that have a dedicated IoT group, or somebody in the company just had an idea? Give us a little more information.
So yeah, a lot of it is varied. So usually what happens, if we see this, is they want to come talk to us. There's developers that want to come talk to us, and either within their engineering groups, and someone says, hey, we're looking at IoT, get up to speed on that very quickly, right? And so these guys, it's something hanging off their desk. It's not something they're dedicated to. And then we see over time that more of them are getting dedicated to it. And they're building up internally. There'll be some groups dedicated to IoT, but most of the time it's a part of an engineering or the computer or the IT department, and they just want to make sure they're armed with that information when they come talk to us. So, all right. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Oh, we have one more question. Okay, hurry, please.
So you talked about LTE M and upgrade from the current starter kit.
Yes.
Will it be the same price?
Good question. So the question, if you didn't hear it, was for LTE upgrade and LTE version of the kit, will it be the same price? I believe so, as far as based on this starter kit, but I can't answer that right now because those talks are just now happening. Okay? All right, well, thank you for your time.